Story time about how I ghosted my boyfriend of 5 years. I know that sounds so bad, but he was a thief, a liar, and a cheater. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Like I said, my boyfriend and I have been together for 5 years. We met in college and were basically inseparable for the first 2 years. On our third year of dating, I started working as a personal assistant for a big celebrity in LA. This meant I had to move to LA. You see, we lived in Texas at the time. Well, things got really bad after I moved. He wouldn't take my phone calls, he would totally ignore my text messages, and he would go out all the time. For the first few months, I tried to keep the peace so I wouldn't say anything, but eventually it got to the point where we wouldn't speak for an entire week. Luckily, my best friend still lived in Texas, so I had her follow him around for 2 days. And you'll never guess what she found. Shout out to my bestie. She showed up to his apartment early in the morning and waited for him to go to work, which he did. When he was done with work, she went back to his job to follow him back home. This is when she told me that he actually went to some girl's house. He didn't end up going home at all that day. This man actually spent the night at some girl's house. The whole time I was trying to call him and text him, and he did not take my phone calls. My best friend even took pictures of his car in this girl's driveway. Since I had this girl's address, I looked her up on the internet. I even found out her phone number because I paid some service online. And of course, I found her Instagram account. She had been posting on her story about hanging out with some guy. But the thing is, she didn't show the guy's face. She only showed his hand. Guess what? I recognize his hand in the picture because it has a tattoo on his pinky. So of course, I took screenshots. Later that day, my best friend followed him to a bar. At this bar, he met up with another girl. Unfortunately, I didn't have any information about this girl. I just knew that she drove a green car. My best friend followed him again the following day. He went to the beach, ran some errands, and then met up with another girl. Yes, we have 3 girls in 2 days. This girl was different because this girl was a friend of mine when I lived in Texas. And I knew she always had a crush on him, but she could never admit it. They went out to dinner and then back to her place. And again, my best friend sent me pictures of everything, so I had all the receipts. Side note, I think of my best friend spying on him and it makes me laugh. I hope you can all say you have best friends that are like that. So here's what I did. I got on the first flight back to Texas and did not tell my boyfriend that I was showing up at his apartment the following day. But guess what I find in his bed? Part 2 is story time about how I ghosted my boyfriend of 5 years. I show up to my boyfriend's apartment to catch him in the act, and you'll never guess what I found in his bed. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. My lying, cheating boyfriend had given me a key to his apartment. So I unlock the apartment and make my way towards his bedroom, really quietly. When I walk into his bedroom, I find him curled up in his bed with another girl. He's holding her in his arms, totally fast asleep. The worst part is, I recognize the girl that was with him. It was one of the girls who I used to be friends with in Texas. I walked backwards and closed the door behind me. That's when I just started to cry. I couldn't believe that he had done this to me. While I was working my butt off in LA trying to make a future for us, he was in Texas dating 3 women at once. No wonder he never picked up my phone calls or even texted me back. So here's what I did. I had printed out all the receipts I had, all the pictures of him hanging out with other girls that my best friend took while she was spying on him. I laid out all the pictures on his kitchen counter, and I left him a letter too. I told him in the letter that I could never forgive him and for him to never contact me again. Oh yeah, and that I wanted him to pay me back the $3,000 he owed me. You see, when we first started dating, he needed a loan for his car. I helped him out and gave him $3,000, which he promised to pay me. Obviously, we dated for 5 years and I never saw any of that money. So aside from him being a cheater and a liar, he was a thief. I left the note and the cards and left his apartment. I went to my parents' house and stayed with them for the weekend. Of course, my boyfriend, ex, showed up to my parents' house and begged to talk to me. My father told him to leave me alone and to never speak to me again. My dad told him that when he was ready to pay him the money. That made me laugh. I was totally crushed. I blocked him on everything, even through email. Of course, he got on someone else's phone and tried to contact me that way, but I never replied. He sends me emails every now and then and promises to pay me the money back. A few days ago, he sent me a picture of an engagement ring. He keeps telling me that I'm the best thing that he's ever had, and that he's sorry and blah, blah, blah. I kind of want to reply to him, but I know that that's a bad idea, right? Or should I just talk to him and see what he has to say? What do you guys think?
My fiance faked being rich just to get me to marry him. Should I leave him? My fiance has lied to me literally over hundreds of times. It all started when he and I met 3 years ago. I was turning 32 and going through a divorce, so I had no intention of ever getting into another relationship. At least not for a long time. I come from a really wealthy family, so I inherited a lot of money when I turned 18. That never stopped me from getting a job. I started working in fashion and it was amazing. Eventually, I became a stylist and had my own business. My relationship with my then husband was not going well, so we decided to get a divorce. But my ex-husband and I never really had hard feelings, and we stayed friends. At the time I was living in New York and had tons of friends. Every single weekend I was going out. And since I was single, I literally had nobody to answer to. My friends and I would go to exclusive clubs and restaurants every single night. This is how I met my compulsive liar of a fiance. He was friends with somebody in my friend group. Now, everyone in my group was pretty wealthy. We all drove expensive cars, owned our own businesses, and we worked really hard. One of my friends introduced me to him, and within the first 5 minutes of our conversation, he told me that he was a Calvin Klein model. Of course, I believed it because he was really attractive. And he basically asked me how much money I made a year. And I was honest with him. I earned around 300 grand a year. That's when he told me that he was a millionaire. Follow for part 2. My fiance faked being rich just so that I could marry him. Should I leave him? Very first night I met him, he told me that he was a millionaire and that he was a Calvin Klein model. Of course, I believed him because he was just that attractive. Then he asked me how much I earned per year, and I told him the truth, $300,000. Look on his face was of utter shock. He told me he almost couldn't believe that I would make that much money. And he started talking about how he's a millionaire and he models and he travels around the world. I was actually impressed. Later that night, I asked the friend that introduced me to him if it was all true. She said, yeah, he posts about it on his Instagram, so I think so. Went to the bathroom and started looking him up on Instagram. And it looked like it was true. He did model for Calvin Klein and was modeling around the world. But honestly, from his Instagram, I really couldn't gather if he was a millionaire or not. It's not like he was posting pictures of him in a Maybach or anything. That very same night, he asked me if he could come to my apartment and I said no. The very next day, he asked me out on a date and I said yes. Ended up going to a really fancy restaurant and he paid for the bill. When the bill came, it was over $1,000. Ordered so many things off the menu. What I really didn't like was that he barely touched any of the food. The rest of the week, he invited me to all these different restaurants. On our second week, I asked him if he wanted to come to my place to have dinner, which he did. And the look of his face when he showed up to my apartment was like shocked. Finally, he asked me how much my rent was. That's when I told him I didn't pay rent. I owned the apartment. That's when he said, yeah, I own my own place too. And then I asked him, why haven't you invited me to your apartment? He said that he was getting renovations done. Exactly a month into us dating, he asked me to be his girlfriend and I said yes. Oh, I had not been to his apartment at this point. He had been paying for everything. Follow for part 3. Fiance faked being rich to get me to marry him. Should I leave him? At this point, he had been paying for everything. Every single time we went to dinner, any date we ever went on, he paid for everything. About 2 months into our relationship, I asked him again if I could go to his apartment. That's when he made up another excuse. He told me the contractor that was doing all the renovations in his apartment basically bailed on him. So his apartment was basically in shambles. I told him that I actually knew a contractor who could help him out. And he told me not to worry about it, that he had it covered. The very next week, he had prepared an elaborate proposal. He took me to Central Park where he had a band. He gave me a 3-carat pink diamond ring. Of course, I said yes. I was so happy. Never thought I'd find love again. After the engagement, I told him that we should just move in together. That's when he said, perfect. I can move into your place next week. I was like, what? He said that he actually wanted to sell his apartment. So I said yes. And the very next week, he moved into my place. When he showed up to my apartment, he literally only had 2 suitcases. And most of the clothes were kind of old and raggedy. I asked him where all of his stuff was, and he said, this is it. That's when I started getting really suspicious. I called his modeling agency, and they told me that they hadn't worked with him in 3 years. So apparently, he wasn't really a model. Confronted him and asked him what was going on. He confessed that he hadn't modeled in years, that when he met me, he was so impressed that he needed to tell me something to impress me. He told me he had a lot of credit card debt and that he actually couldn't afford the lifestyle he was showing me. Then he also told me that he never even had an apartment. He was sleeping on his friend's couch. I told him I couldn't marry him or trust him, and that he was probably only after my money. He swears that he loves me. No, he hasn't asked me for money and he's offering to actually pay for rent. My friends and family think I should leave him, but I love him and I'm so attracted to him. What should I do?